When it came to finding somebody who's multicultural for this speech, I realized pretty quickly that I do not have any multicultural friends, and it's not something that I did on purpose. It's just kind of the way it is and how it happened. I'm not a very outgoing person, so I don't need a whole lot of friends to begin with, and people I kind of gravitate towards are more or less like-minded than me or as me, so that's kind of who I just surround myself with. If it wasn't for my brother's friend James, I don't know if I would have been able to find somebody to do the speech on. But after this interview and some of the research that I did learn a lot about the Jewish lifestyle, and that's kind of what I'm going to talk about in the speech. And the first thing that stood out to me from Judaism is how important family is. During the seasons of Judaism, family is very important, and sometimes during every Friday night of these certain seasons, the entire family gets together. So it's not just like your parents and brothers and siblings and whatnot. It's your aunts and uncles and grandparents and cousins, and they all get together and just have meals and pray and all sorts of different things. According to a BBC article I read, in Judaism, raising a family is sacred. It is a way to express loyalty to Judaism. In a Jewish family, parents and children are responsible for each other as a way of honoring God. Parents are seen as partners in God's creation of each human being. So to honor parents is to honor God, and that was pretty interesting to me. So it also shows how religious Judaism is. Also, when families get together. During this interview, something I never heard of before was it's a Shabbat dinner. So I had to do a little bit of research about that after this interview to learn a little bit more about it. And what I had found was that Shabbat is a day of rest that lasts from sundown of Friday evening through nightfall of Saturday night. And it's more or less just relaxing. So depending on how strict you are, from the stuff that I read, it can get pretty strict. For example, like a lot of people, they won't drive during this time, but it got to as strict as like people won't even flip on a light switch. That's how serious some people do take this. Their traditional Friday night for Shabbat meal features a fish course followed by a soup course and then chicken or meat course. According to an article about Shabbat dinner, typical Shabbat food includes challah, which is a type of bread, and wine, which are both blessed before the meal. Eating meat is traditional on Shabbat because meat is historically considered a luxury food. And then another thing that kind of stood out to me from this interview with James was that Judaism has many traditions, and the one that he mentioned specifically was Passover. So I also did a little bit of research about that, and he mentioned this is where his grandparents would set up a large table throughout the house so the entire family could sit at one table. And then his grandpa would lead them through it's kind of like a story from what I gathered called Seder, which is a story from how the Jews were freed from slavery in Egypt. And then during Seder, foods of symbolic significance commemorating the Hebrews' liberation are eaten and prayers and traditions are performed. It was interesting when James said that during Christmas, it felt like the whole world is celebrating Christmas and that Judaism did not fit into that format. And so that got me thinking because I grew up celebrating Christmas, so I never really put any thought into it. So I got to thinking, like, what other religions or groups out there that don't celebrate Christmas as well. And I found that Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism also do not celebrate Christmas. So it just goes to show that there are other cultures out there that don't celebrate Christmas as well. And the final thing that stood out was even though James was born in the United States, he said sometimes he felt like he didn't fit in just because he was Jewish. And one of the things that he talked about was when he was a kid, some of his friends who were Christian or from a different religion would tell him that he'd go to hell for not accepting Jesus. And that's unfortunate. But at the same time, religion is something that people have always been passionate about and probably always will be passionate about. And you can just look at any kind of history book and see how many countless wars were started just because of religion. After this speech, I realized that I need to venture out more, learn more about other different cultures and people, and just kind of broaden my horizon. I learned a lot about Judaism from this interview and from the research that I did to do this speech. And that's my speech on multicultural.